Well, we got Johnny Wolff on the call. Johnny, I really appreciate your time. And Johnny is the CEO and founder of HomeRoom Co-Living. And you can definitely check out the website at livehomeroom.com or livehomeroom.com. I'm one of the two.
Either way works fine.
It's spelled the same way, right?
Yes.
So outside of that, where else would they find you, Johnny?
Yeah, you can email me, johnny@livehomeroom.com at any time. Happy to talk investments. We do free calls with people who are looking to discuss real estate investing, passive options, and co-living is our specialty. So if you're doing rent by the room, that's what we love to talk to folks about, and happy to connect with anyone interested in that approach.
Yeah, so the co-living thing is kind of an interesting niche. How did you manage to get into this?
I think a lot of folks start, maybe you started this podcast, or a lot of people start companies to solve their own problem when there isn't a good solution. Mm-hmm. I was in Silicon Valley living with roommates after college for 5 years. Then I moved to Austin, Texas, and did real estate investing. And I rented out by the room because I couldn't get enough for rent because Austin prices were so crazy. And then I moved to Kansas City and I did the same thing. And, what I found is that there's some key things to make a roommate house fun and healthy to live in, and that finding roommates on Craigslist is awful. So that's sort of why, HomeRoom was born in hopes that I wouldn't have to do that anymore. And, actually the house that I live in now, HomeRoom finds my roommates, and it's great. So I finally achieved my dream of never having to find roommates on Craigslist again, which is very cool.
Sure. Yeah. So just describe this platform that you have, the HomeRoom. You said that HomeRoom finds your roommates.
Yeah. So it's a double-sided marketplace for the real estate investors. We pair real estate investors with roommate tenants. It's like Airbnb, but I guess like for roommate houses and longer term. And so we help investors set up their property for co-living. We have some specifications, or if you don't have a property yet, we'll help you buy a property that it matches what the ideal co-living house is. Then it will be listed on our platform, and then roommate tenants can go online, see who the roommates are there currently, as well as the space, and then make a decision and then lease with us. And on average, folks stay a bit over a year with HomeRoom. So, they go through a pretty long process figuring out which room's the right one for them and the right roommates. And then they move in with us. So those are the two sides. We help the investor get more rent. We help the tenants, find great roommates and save money.
Sure. So, you talked about how this is an alternative to, for real estate investors, especially in these more difficult markets. What have you found on average does this increase rents by in order to make this worthwhile?
Yeah, we can actually increase rents in a property by up to 70%.
Oh, so wow. It is a pretty big difference.
Can be a pretty big difference. Each house is different. And it obviously depends on the number of bedrooms you have. Mm-hmm. But the more bedrooms you have, the more difference it'll make.
So you compared it to Airbnb at one point. Are there amenities, and do you typically have to furnish these out like you would in Airbnb?
Yeah, very similar to an Airbnb, actually. We except we don't do bedroom furnishing. So we have the tenants furnish their bedrooms. They stay for a long period of time. So most of the time they already have furniture. So it would be an inconvenience for those to be furnished. But the common areas and the shared kitchen and all that is Airbnb'd out, just like it would be with an Airbnb. We usually use a local interior designer that'll find furniture on the cheap from estate sales.
Oh, sure. So would you say most of your residents or tenants then are typically students?
Actually, the average age is 27.
Oh, it's a little older than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Does that seem to depend on the market, or how is that driven?
This is sort of the stage that I was in, and the number of folks between 18 and 34 living with roommates today is actually in the tens of millions. So there's a number of people that are living with roommates in that age group. And so it's a much bigger, much longer lasting market than I think most folks realize.
Sure. So on the tenant side, then, how does your platform help the residents determine if it's a good fit? You mentioned that there's some tools there for them as well.
Yeah, so the residents go through our process, which means, the first step to any good tenant experience is making sure that the tenant's the right fit for us. And so we make sure they have good credit background and eviction history, criminal
Mm.
checks, all that stuff. We do an interview with them and discuss kind of the HomeRoom platform, make sure it's a good fit for what they're looking for. And then we'll do a video call with the current roommates. During the process, they also can kind of look through and see who the current roommates are in each house, see what their hobbies are, see what their jobs are, and see if that makes sense for where they want to live. And so they're able to do some pre-screening even before starting the application process.
Oh, that's interesting. So there's kind of some serious matchmaking going on there.
Yeah, a little bit of matchmaking.
So the current residents then, how much say do they have in allowing that person to be part of their little community?
Uh, they have, I would say somewhat significant stay. Say we have different spectrums of what they have say on, right? So we have to
Mhm.
honor fair housing a bit, or we have to honor fair housing, and so if it's someone that doesn't play video games like you like to play video games, we're usually going to say, hey, that's not really we can't let you say reject someone for that reason. But if it's someone that you don't feel safe with or comfortable with, then you can say no, that's no problem.
Sure. Okay. So during this whole crazy time of the pandemic and everything else, how has this fared? Like, how has it been going?
There's been different responses to different co-living situations. Homeroom did well. We were in a stage in which we were growing, but not, as rapidly as some other companies. So we were able to, and our occupancy was in the high 90s, like 97% when the
Mm.
when the pandemic struck. So we were able to, grow just a little slower and figure some things out about remote leasing. All of our leasing is now done 100% remote. Do a virtual tour, all that. So we kind of had already ideated on that concept. And I do think that most leasing will be done remotely in the not too distant future across all platforms, all housing types. But we kind of were able to adapt very quickly to that. So it didn't affect us too much. We had no communal spread. We had 3 houses that got COVID, but we were able to isolate that individual. And since the average age of our tenants is 27, we kind of got lucky in that respect. So we actually expanded to Dallas in September. So we were doing so well that we actually decided to launch another market. So
Sure. So are you specifically, your platform is specifically in certain markets, or is it across the United States now?
we're focused on Kansas City, Dallas, and Austin today, but the goal is to add markets as rapidly as we can.
Sure. So when you had said that you'll even help some real estate investors find properties to accomplish this,
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that? How do you go about that?
Sure. So if you're looking to do a passive real estate investment or even a more active one where you kind of help us find the property, we have a process where we'll talk to you, identify your goals, connect those to our strategy, and find a property in the city of your preference that we think will get you the best return. And then we'll help you set it up for co-living, and then we'll handle it from there. So you pretty much bring the cash, you kind of talk to us, make sure we're aligned, and then we'll find a property that we think is perfect for you and that in kind of your situation, and then set it up for co-living, and then you'll start getting checks. So it's very close to turnkey. We don't do heavy flips very often, but we do them. But we're typically buying on the MLS with local agents that we have trained to find these properties specifically for us.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit about some of those criteria that you've trained them on? Like what properties are they typically looking for?
Sure. So we're, just like any rental, where you're looking in the kind of the cheapest quartile of the market, regardless of what area you're in, because there's not a much rent premium as you go up. But it doesn't mean that we're not looking. We're generally looking at B class neighborhoods. We really like B class neighborhoods with some population density, let's say above 1,000 per square mile, which is like a relatively dense suburb, I think, or denser than that. The other pieces that we're looking for is we want good parking. We're generally working very focused on making sure that the co-living house fits in with the neighborhood and doesn't cause issues. So it has to have enough parking so we don't park in front of the neighbor's houses. Very important to us. Also looking for a number of shared showers, and we steer away from HOA neighborhoods. HOAs can be a little bit anti co-living. So we try to stay away from them as much as we can.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So how long have you been doing this, and how many houses are you currently managing right now?
Yeah, so we have 50 today. We've been doing it for a bit over 2.5 years.
Sure. Okay. You're growing pretty aggressively then, 50 houses like in that short of time.
Yeah, I think we're just getting warmed up, to be honest. So we have a goal of trying to add 10 to 15 by the end of this year. That starts to get a little bit more aggressive we feel like we've worked out the kinks, right? We have a lot of happy tenants. We have a lot of happy investors.
Sure. So just to remind everybody, head over to livehomeroom.com. I'll make sure to have those links in the show notes. And I'm pretty sure you're also pretty active on LinkedIn and Facebook, right?
Yeah, very active on LinkedIn in terms of for the real estate investors. Facebook we use to more focus on our tenants and kind of the fun activities we do. But either one is a great way to reach us.
Sure. So if somebody was interested in getting started in something like this in their backyard, what do you know now you wished you would have known when you started?
Well, I mean, it's I think for me, and those are two separate questions in a way, because we are working to become like the next Airbnb, but focused on co-living. And
Right.
So for us, the big things I wish I would have known was that 5 houses is very easy, but when you get past 20, it starts to get really interesting, especially with co-living, because now you have 120 residents. A lot of your systems and processes break. But for someone trying to do it in their backyard themselves, I think the key is understanding the demographic that you're serving. And this is for all real estate, and be hyper-focused on that. So there are some people that do co-living for entrepreneurs. Some people do it for just 25-year-old young adult professionals. Some people do it for very low income. All of those are fine approaches. Just be focused on that. We've seen, I think, some of the biggest mistakes in the co-living space are that some of our competitors have focused on just too high end, but roommate housing is inherently a value budget proposition. So I would say be value and budget focused. Don't spend 20,000 like an Airbnb and setting up your house. Spend 3,000, right? So you can make sure that it's affordable for you. The roommates are going to appreciate having furniture. They're probably not going to appreciate that much having super nice furniture from West Elm or something like that. So just target your market and save money, and don't overdo it. I think that's one of the big things. We used to spend 15 grand per property to set it up. Now we spend 4, and everyone's just as happy as they were before. So.
So, that's interesting. You bring up the value proposition. A lot of people that would be in a co-living scenario usually finds a buddy, gets an apartment together. Why would they choose a co-living scenario such as yours versus doing that just with a friend or somebody they know?
I mean, when people relocate cities, which millennials are the most kind of adaptable, transient generation we've had. They don't always know people in the new cities. And, we have a number of people that live with us that actually have local friends, but there's not always a buddy that's available. Right. So that's why, 20 million, millions and millions of people are finding roommates through Craigslist all the time, and why people are doing it on Facebook Marketplace, and why the Roomster app exists is because there are thousands and hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of people looking for roommates that they just don't have anyone in their social circle or anyone in their social circle that's actually looking right then. So that's why co-living is booming, right? The VCs and real estate developers put $3.2 billion into the space in 2019. So it's seen as this massive vertical. I think it's probably the fastest growing vertical in real estate today. And it's because there's this massive cohort of people between 18 and 34 that are waiting to get married till the end of that period. And they don't really want to live alone. And they don't have natural roommates to live with them, or they can't find the right space. That's the cool thing about co-living. You get roommates and a space that's set up for roommates, right? even if you move into an apartment with your friend, like who's going to pay for the couch? And what if they move out? Does he take the couch? Like there's a lot of things that co-living solves that even with your friends that are roommates, which I've had, co-living is actually a really elegant solution even for those folks.
Well, one thing that I can think of, like, we talked about the amenities at the beginning. Like, what would somebody get in a co-living that they wouldn't traditionally, that they might have to split the utility payments or something? Do you typically handle all of that? Like the internet and other things?
Yeah, that's I think one of the co-living boom is actually, I think people the elder millennials, they live with roommates, then they added other roommates from Craigslist, and there's all these issues, right? How do you get furniture? And so we used to like borrow a friend's truck, and then we'd all split it, and then one guy would move out, and he'd ask for like $25 for the couch that he paid for.
Mhm.
And so we still make fun of my friend Matt actually because he asked for that. But then the other thing is utility bills come in 2 months later. So a guy moves out and he still has water from like 2 months before, afterwards. And like, how do you track him down? So co-living takes care of all that stuff, right? The house is already furnished. It's already established. The utilities are a fixed price for everybody, and it doesn't change if the rooms are vacant or anything. It's just guaranteed. It also comes with maid service. We found that when you live with roommates, there's always like some roommates that want to be clean, and those are the ones at HomeRoom we love. And then there's some that are just they're not in that headspace yet. So you have a maid come in and they do deep cleaning throughout the property once a month. It takes a lot of the tension away from roommate living, right? The other thing is we do yard care, and so that person is making sure the gutters are clean. And then we'll ship HVAC filters to the house and make sure that it gets changed. So it's a managed service approach to living that's a bit more complete. And with roommates, they're so young, they don't understand a lot of house care basics. So it's a really nice thing to have for the landlord as well. Your HVAC filter is getting changed every quarter. That your house is getting cleaned. That we're in there once a month with a cleaning crew. So all these things really help both the tenants and the landlord, regardless of if you have roommates that or don't know. We have both. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that you can increase the rents by 70%, but based on what you're saying there, there's a lot of expenses that you're taking on as well. That's probably consuming a large chunk of that additional rent. Would you say, or what
No,
can typically, what would be like the cash on cash return for a single family home in this type of scenario?
Yeah, I mean, we do it. We actually have an above and beyond amenities and utilities fee where tenants pay 140 month fixed for the utilities, the cleaning, everything. So that actually wouldn't play into the investor's equation at all.
Oh, okay.
So it would
So
increase.
you're charging an increased rent and a maintenance fee on top of that. I see.
Gotcha. Yep. Correct. And so the cash on cash, or the raw cash on cash in this approach is pretty high. If you were to do it yourself, it would be probably 15 to 20%. Our homeroom takes a piece of that, and so we end up being between 7 and 12 is typically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's because of the homeroom managed services and us recruiting tenants and all that. So,
Sure.
but the amount of rent that's kicked off by this model, it can be comparable to a short-term rental, but just with a lot more stability, which is very cool, and a lot less, pandemic risk in terms of income.
So how many people do you typically put in one home?
The average is 5.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you typically have one room per person, or will
Always.
they even
That's
always?
Mhm.
Sure. Okay. So you're dealing with some pretty large houses if you're dealing with 5 bedrooms.
Yeah, the unit economics, it's hard to get a tenant to pay more for rent regardless of how many rooms are in a house. So people think about it in terms of their unit, which is their room. So someone's going to pay you $450 for a room if there's 2 rooms or 7 rooms. So we find that the returns go up linearly with the number of bedrooms, which is why we generally are looking for bigger houses.
Sure. And what's the bathroom ratio then? Is it?
We think more about showers than bathrooms. It's about we try to do 3-to-1 of shared showers per head. We'll go up to 4-to-1, but we don't do 5-to-1 kind of crosses an imaginary line, and we have a house with 5-to-1 in there. It's an issue sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So if it has a five bedrooms, it's likely has 2 showers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So outside of that, then, I think it's really a good idea regarding the cleaning. That is especially something that stands out, because I can imagine it relieves a couple things. You, as a landlord, as people are changing out, to keep the place clean and manageable, but relieving that pressure off the residents too. I can see how that could be appealing.
Yeah, you just they're the dynamics of a roommate house, and we're far from perfect yet, but is that you have a couple people that clean a lot, they like cleaning, then you have a couple people that are passable, and then you maybe have 1 or 2 people that are just not very good at it. And so what will happen is the tension will build if you don't kind of relieve that with like proactive cleaning.
When you say a deep cleaning, what does that include? Like, does that include washing the dishes and whatever's outstanding? And is it like an all day thing? Or
an all day thing? No, we can't afford all day. That'd be nice, I'm sure. But yeah, it does. They do the dishes or anything like that, but they do provide feedback on how clean the house is. And if the house is in complete disrepair, then they actually have a Maid grade scorecard where they grade the residents. And if it's too bad, we actually say, hey guys, the house was in such bad state and you committed in your lease to keeping it clean that we're going to send out the maid again in 2 weeks. You're going to be paying $25 each to do that. And so we kind of have like a standard for like, it has to be a minimum level of cleanliness. And,
Sure.
We want to charge more for people that are not honoring kind of their agreement with us there.
Oh no, that's a good idea. So when you said the maid service there, it's for a limited amount of time, what, a couple hours or?
Yeah, I think about 3 hours. They usually have a team of 4 though.
Okay.
So it's a decent amount of staff hours there.
Sure. Okay. So, and then the residents know that to expect these people to show up and start cleaning on a specific day each month. Sure.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's yeah. I told you we'd get into the weeds on a couple of things as I and I think it's really interesting that you have the maid service essentially grading the residents.
Yeah, you have to, I mean, like a little bit inspired by Uber passenger rating and things like that, or you just want to have some sort of accountability there. I don't know if we've perfected that approach and like the buy-in and the communication and all of that, but it's definitely an effective way to kind of have we just don't have the situation where you have a tenant who moves out and they have their hoarder house, or you haven't been inside the property. All these things that can happen with properties, that investment properties, can't happen at HomeRoom. We're in there too often.
So you mentioned that the residents have a certain responsibility of a level of cleanliness regarding the building. Is there anything else that is pushed on to the residents regard to their responsibility?
Sure. We ask them to come to roommate interviews where we do the video calls with the new roommates coming in. And so that's a big piece of it. We ask them to do quarterly roommate check-ins where they talk to each other once a quarter and kind of work through challenges, or basically just say, hey, can we not do this and that? One of the things that can build up is if you don't see your roommates a lot, there can be some tension there. And so you kind of want to relieve that and talk about things that could make the house better. And then we have kind of the move out process is fairly extensive. We wanted them to put it back to it in the exact same condition they got it in. So definitely we see it as a partnership. It's affordable housing. Some rooms in Kansas City are $325, right? So part of that is it's not, there's no valet. We do have really cool customer service that'll respond via text 24/7, which is awesome. And so it's a really nice service level for the price, but it still is something you have to contribute to.
Sure. Okay. Well, outside of everything we asked here today, like I said, we could probably spend a lot more time on a lot more But before I let you go, I wanted to make sure, and before I ask you my last question, I wanted to remind everybody to head over to your website, livehomeroom.com, livehomeroom.com, and we'll make sure to have those links in the show notes. And again, make sure you hit them up on all of the social networks. But one last question is, well, I'm going to give you two more questions. First of all, I find it interesting that you focused on a couple markets, Kansas and Texas, but why did you focus on those markets? Because I know you come out of California or something, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm from the I'm from Northern California. I moved to Austin in 2015 to invest in real estate. I'd invested out of state before that, and San Francisco was just too expensive for me to invest in real estate. So I relocated to Austin. That's really where I started the concept of buying properties, renting them out by the room, setting them up with some services. And so Austin was really our first market. That's our first homeroom. Moved to Kansas City because Austin properties don't cash flow at all. So I wanted to balance that out. And I did some analysis on both markets and thought, honestly, Austin and Kansas City are my two favorites in the class that they're in terms of appreciation and then cash flow markets. I think Kansas City is my favorite cash flow market. In the United States, I think Austin's my favorite appreciation market. So those are really my two favorites. And that's why we started there. And then I thought Dallas, the metro, was just exploding. And I thought prices were starting to creep up and that affordability was becoming a challenge. And it's just a massive metro and didn't have any co-living options. So that's where we picked for number 3. And we're looking at 3 more markets coming up in the next 6 months or so. So
going to give us a sneak peek?
Looking at Indy, we're looking at Phoenix, and we're trying to decide between Chicago and Denver right now.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So, well, and then the last question is there a question you wished I would have asked you here today?
Sure. I think I think when people are looking at a real estate investment option, we have multifamily, we have single family, we have short-term rentals and single family. Why do I think co-living is going to emerge as an asset class in and of itself in the near future? I think similar to short-term rentals, it allows you to buy better properties in nicer areas. So with residential real estate, you can get really awesome appreciation bumps without really doing anything. It's not based on net operating income. Very cool. But then you don't have the volatility or the level of effort that come with short-term rentals. So HomeRoom is essentially creating a new residential real estate investment asset class, co-living single family properties. And we think that those will be sold and bought just like short-term rental properties are today, at a higher cap rate than standard single family rentals, with that appreciation potential that you can only get in the residential space. So we're really excited about the asset class. We think, it'll be something that it's always been like a really niche product for people that like rent, like student housing and things like that. But I think the co-living platforms that are coming out are going to create some really cool investment opportunities for both small and bigger investors.
So, well, I can't thank you enough. This has been a great conversation. And again, head over to livehomeroom.com to check out the platform and see if you wanted to connect with Johnny and jump into this. This sounds, like you said, definitely the future when it comes to some of these spaces. I can definitely hear and see where the trends are, and I think this is one of them. I think you do have a great niche. Again, I really appreciate your time. I hope we can chat again.
Yeah, Jack, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.